Trade for Justin Herbert and Ricky Pearsall now before their value skyrockets during the NFL draft. We reveal our buy, sell, and hold candidates for Dynasty Fantasy Football in today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network. Kate Magdziuk is here with us again today for one more day. Vinny will be back tomorrow. But in case you missed the last couple episodes, Kate is my wife, and she's also the co-host of the Locked On Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast with Marcus Mosier. So we're going to do a fun episode today. Typically, we don't discuss Dynasty Fantasy Football on this podcast, but today we're going to because we have the expert here, so we might as well use her knowledge. And then also we have the NFL draft coming up, and it's important to right now realize what players, if you're playing Dynasty, what players you're holding on your roster that you should be trading away or trying to trade for right now, or just holding and being patient with them through the NFL draft, because we know some veterans might lose their job, lose some value, or gain value after the draft if teams don't end up selecting positions that we think they might. So this is going to be a really fun episode. We'll each give you our buy candidate, sell candidate, and hold candidate before the draft. Before we get to that, I want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNNFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's start with buying candidates. A couple players that we would like to trade for before the NFL draft because we think their value will increase. And then we'll also give you an example or two of trades that you might be able to get done with these players involved. So, Kate, who's your top buy candidate before the NFL draft?
I'm going all in on Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert, who finished as the overall QB 12 in 2024, despite the fact that, I'm going to be honest, a lot of people had some concerns, even me, about potential for a low passing volume under Greg Roman. With Jim Harbaugh's first year as head coach in Los Angeles, I don't think a lot of people knew what to expect. Justin Herbert, we know he's like a good quarterback, right? I don't think anybody's debated that. But the question mark was more about what is the fantasy value? And started off the year kind of slow, but as we saw Ladd McConkey sort of take over his position in this offense and really, I think, come out, he had a really strong second half to the season. We also saw that, there was a lot of upside there for Justin Herbert. We had, starting the first half of the year, we had a lot of 12-point games from Justin Herbert, which not great. But come the second half of the year, we were regularly getting 20-plus point outings, closed off the fantasy football playoffs with 3 consecutive 23.5-point performances across the board. That carried you through your fantasy playoffs. Thank you, Justin Herbert. Why trade for him ahead of the draft? I think the Chargers are going to be in the mix for some weaponry here for Justin Herbert. It's not just going to be Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston here in 2025. I think they could be in the mix for a tight end, maybe a Colston Loveland, a player that we've talked a lot about as just an absolute elite route runner at the tight end position. His ability to create separation is incredible. I also think they could be in the mix for a wide receiver. I think regardless of your take, you'd be crazy if you didn't think that they were going to walk away with some extra help for Justin Herbert in this draft. And I think that people are going to want to be in the mix for his dynasty value when they do.
Yeah, I mean, Herbert's not going to be cheap to go get, but he's already a guy that I've been wanting to buy high on anyways, because you're buying the name, but also his value is not as high as it should be because of his last 2 years that have been down. But you mentioned the second half of the season, weeks 8 through 18, he was averaging 19.6 points per game. The first half of the season was so atrocious that it brought down the rest of his numbers for the year. But yes, I agree with you. I expect them to take a tight end early or grab another wide receiver because it can't just be Quentin Johnston. So I do expect Herbert to have more weapons and continue that success he saw in his new offense with Greg Roman last year, where they ended up, where he ended up really shining. So I like that pick by you. Do you have any examples of trades that you could do?
One of my favorite examples of a trade, and this is a trade that I want your take on, Michelle, as the resident 49ers expert. Let's look at the guy, for those of you watching on YouTube, sitting right behind you, Brock Purdy, and a 2026 second round pick in rookie drafts for Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I'm taking that. I love Brock Purdy, and I think Purdy's a good fantasy option, but taking Herbert for sure.
Right? Like, get that stability there. You also have a lot of package deals where maybe you're looking at, Justin Herbert for another quarterback plus, another quarterback sort of combination trade that I really liked. And again, these are all real examples. You go over to dynastyleaguefootball.com and they literally source trades from various fantasy platforms. In a super flex league, Trevor Lawrence in the 105 for Justin Herbert, Devonta Smith in the 303.
Yes. I mean,
Like,
the 105 hurts. And I do think Trevor Lawrence is a bit underrated right now. I don't like Trevor Lawrence at all, but I think for fantasy, they're going to also add weapons and maybe his value will go up. That one's trickier, but I still would do it because Herbert, I do think, can be one of those top talents again at, as a fantasy quarterback. I would honestly try to do a Herbert, try to give away Patrick Mahomes and get Herbert plus, just see what you can get there. Cause I don't think they're that far off of fantasy values at all. And I'm more excited about Herbert's future and his new offense and what skill players they can get him than I am about the Chiefs. Now, my buy candidate, it's Ricky Pearsall, the wide receiver for the 49ers heading into
you're going to have to
second
sell
season.
me on this one, homie.
He's way too low in rankings right now at wide receiver 47 in Dynasty rankings, according to Fantasy Pros. He was a first round draft pick last year, number 31 overall. He gets shot right before the season in the chest. This dude should have never played football again. Yeah, he comes back in week 7. And yeah, it's going to take time. He's a rookie. He missed his first half of the year after getting shot, almost dying. So yeah, you come in kind of cold as a rookie. Shanahan historically has not trusted rookies at all. Remember, Brandon Ayuk only got to do anything as a rookie because every single player got hurt that could possibly catch a ball in that offense that year. So I do think going into a second year with how many vacated targets this offense now has with Deebo Samuel gone and even Jordan Mason and Chris Conley, smaller guys, but there's 100 vacated targets just between them. And that's not even considering Brandon Ayuk could miss a good chunk of this season. So Ricky Pearsall is going to get a shot to prove why they took him in the first round, a first round talent. And I do not think that the 49ers have the space right now to be drafting a wide receiver early. Too many needs on the defensive line, on the offensive line, at safety, at linebacker, at corner, to take a wide receiver anytime early. And as I just mentioned, Shannon, even if they did take a guy in the third round, let's say, A, their third round picks have been atrocious, and B, Shanahan's just not going to trust him to be on the field. So I do think heading into the season, Ricky Pearsall is going to get every chance to be the wide receiver 1 for this team. And if they go through this draft without taking a wide receiver early and we start to get news about Brandon Ayuk missing the first half of the season, Ricky Pearsall's value is going to massively skyrocket.
I think that's fair. I think the draft capital you mentioned, the fact that, when we did see him actually involved in really the back half of the season, we did have one nice spike game, 20.7 fantasy points there in week 17. We saw some production. Now I might have some of just my pre-draft biases eking in here for Ricky Pearsall because I wasn't necessarily sold on his upside. He's an older wide receiver, never had really a monster season coming out of Florida. I just wasn't convinced, but the good thing is, if you're not convinced about the player, you have to remember that Kyle Shanahan and his play calling abilities have the ability to elevate talent, regardless of maybe what it looks like on paper. His systems can mask a lot of inefficiencies and problems in, any sort of player's game. So that's a plus in the column for you. And he does
a lot of real
not
life.
bad.
A lot of real life trades right now. You can get it done with a second round rookie pick, or there's one with Cortland Sutton, a 212 rookie pick. I would do that. Or Marquise. This is a crazy one to me. You got to give away Marquise Brown. Who cares? He's nothing. The 407 and 505 in rookie drafts for Ricky Pearsall. You can get him for cheap. But even if you the person that won't give him away too cheap, there's the one out here, 203 for Ricky Pearsall. That might seem a little rich for some people, I would still be doing it. I still think it's a good value. We are going to get to our trade candidates now, guys that we're trying to get off of our rosters before the NFL draft because we think their value is going to drop pretty significantly. We will get to that right after a quick break. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Gametime app. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. You get a panorama view of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. It takes seconds to buy tickets. Super, super easy to use the app. And then they have the best ticket coverage in the business in case anything goes wrong. They have event cancellation protection, 24-hour return guarantees, and even job loss assurance. I actually just used the Gametime app a couple weeks ago to buy Astros tickets. I was on other apps and sites looking for tickets, and the same exact rows and same tickets were a good $60 cheaper on the Gametime app. It was crazy. So it's an awesome platform to use, and they're super safe and super easy. So you get to take the worries and the guessing work out of buying tickets with Gametime. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we gave you guys the two players that we are looking to buy before the NFL draft. Now we're going to switch over to two players we're looking to trade away before the NFL draft. Kate, who's your top guy here you want off your roster before the draft?
Get Tyrone Tracy Jr., running back for the New York Giants, off my Dynasty rosters as soon as possible. Now, Tyrone Tracy, I feel like was a bit of a darling in fantasy last year because we knew there was going to be some opportunity to run the ball with the Giants given Saquon Barkley's departure. They brought in Devin Singletary, who we know Brian Dable's a huge fan of. But Tyrone Tracy was the guy that everybody was kind of looking at. They're like, he's, this 5th round rookie. He has a lot of talent. But again, what did that amount to in his first season when he really did have all the opportunity in the world to take advantage and really make a name for himself? Not a ton. Let's look at some of the efficiency metrics in the regular season. Among the 70 running backs with 50 or more rush attempts, he had an 18% missed forced tackle rate on rush attempts. That ranked 35th among those 70 running backs. 2.8 yards after contact per rush attempt. That ranked 41st among those 70 running backs. And he ranked 47th in first down / touchdown rate per PFF. Every single one of those ranked behind Devin Singletary, behind him. 3 finishes inside the top 10 in full PPR leagues, despite being tied for the 14th most targets at the position. I'm just wondering, what is the upside for this offense that, we don't really know how good this team is going to look. And then, I think we'd all be kind of kidding ourselves if we weren't envisioning the Giants making some sort of investment, I would say, in the first 2 rounds at the running back position. I think it's very well within the realm of possibility here. This is a great running back class. There's a lot of athleticism. And I think there are probably 5 running backs that would come in day one and push for the starting job here in New York. So I'm out on Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah, it's hard to trust him because it's not like his numbers were insane for fantasy. So even if he somehow but let's say they don't take a guy or he wins the competition, it's not like you're missing out on an elite running back here. He's just going to take over. And also, it doesn't even have to be a first or second round pick for the Giants. Like you mentioned, this class is very loaded with running backs. Tyrone Tracy himself was a 5th round pick last year. If they take a guy in the third, 4th, 5th round pick, he's going to get an opportunity to compete with Tyrone Tracy. It's not like Tracy has this insane draft capital that they have to lean on. So I'm definitely with you there. I also have a running back I'm looking to trade before the draft, and it's Steelers running back Jaylen Warren. He's currently the starter. Right? They don't have Najee Harris anymore. They did sign Kenneth Gainwell in free agency, but it's Gainwell, it's Jaylen Warren, it's Cordell Patterson. It's right now, if they were to go in the season, it would be Jaylen Warren starting. However, I just don't see the Steelers going that route with him being the lead back. So last year, the Steelers ran the ball 31.4 times per game. That was fourth most in the NFL. However, they averaged just 4.1 yards per carry. So they struggled with efficiency. And, Najee Harris definitely struggled with efficiency. That's why they let him go. But even though with Najee Harris struggling with efficiency, he still got so many of the carries over Jaylen Warren. It was Harris with 263 carries on the season and Jaylen Warren with only 120. So we know the Steelers want to run the ball. And I don't think Jaylen Warren can handle that big of a workload. So that means they need to add running backs. And the Steelers are not afraid to take a running back in the first round. We saw that just a few years ago with Najee Harris. And they're not an analytical team where they're like worried about positional value or anything. They're just going to take the guy they want. And I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, but that just seems to be what they do. So I won't be shocked if they pull the trigger on grabbing a running back in the first round. But even if they don't, and they don't have a second round pick, I still think in the third round, they're going to take a guy. And there's going to be options out there in this loaded class of players that could definitely beat Jaylen Warren in a competition to be the starter. Warren will still get his opportunities. But let's say the Steelers don't take a guy in the first 5 rounds and Jaylen Warren's the starter, all that goodness. Even last year when Warren saw 14 touches in a game, it happened 5 times. He averaged 10.9 fantasy points per game in half PPR. Never scored more than 13 fantasy points in any of those games. He even had 17 touches in one of those games, scored 11 points. There really is no upside, even if everything goes perfectly and he somehow keeps his job. Now, his value right now in Dynasty is running back 32. I don't think he should be anywhere close to that. So, no, you're not going to be able to trade Jaylen Warren for a bunch. But if I can get any second round pick for Jaylen Warren, I'm taking it, even if it's a late second round. And there's real life trades out there, a ton of them of that happening. Or there's, you put him with another player. There was a Jaylen Warren and Raheem Mostert you have to give away for Jalen Waddle, who you're going to talk about later. Yes, give me the chance of Jalen Waddle coming back to life over holding Jaylen Warren and Raheem Mostert. Or there's Jaylen Warren and Isaiah Pacheco, who you almost had in this segment as a sell before the draft. You put both those guys together and someone got the 206, the 306, and 406. Give me that for sure. Jaylen Warren, try out Jaylen Warren for Ricky Pearsall. I don't know if that's a bit of a reach. Maybe people won't do that, but that's something I would try too. It's just, you're not going to get a ton for him, but I want to get something for him before it's too late.
Some running backs that are kind of being ranked in that similar range that I think are worth bringing up, that I just think I think I have a pretty good idea of what Jaylen Warren is as a player. And I think the Steelers have made it clear because, again, you mentioned Najee Harris. Najee Harris wasn't efficient over the time that his tenure with the Steelers overlapped with Jaylen Warren's, right? They had opportunities to get the ball. Jaylen Warren was the more efficient running back, but they did not seem to trust him with the volume. And then this past year, he dealt with some health issues. I think generally speaking, he's a complementary asset. And what do complementary assets really do for your fantasy football team? They don't do a ton. So what I like to do is maybe turn that sort of complementary asset that, look, barring an injury, I'm never going to be able to throw him into my starting lineup with the way that I'm projecting things right now. Where could I maybe turn Jaylen Warren into some more upside? Some players being ranked around there. Zach Charbonnet, who's going to be playing with a new offensive coordinator, has that second round draft capital, well-rounded skill set in the league. And I don't know, maybe the Seahawks could be in the market to move on from Kenneth Walker at some point. Or maybe a Trey Benson, 22-year-old third-round pick running back from last year's class, who I think has a lot of upside, is going to be playing behind James Conner. But I'd much rather pass on the asset I know with such a limited upside and try to turn that into either opportunities to make more draft picks and take my shot on a guy that could be a legit foundational player in my roster, rather than just kind of sitting him on my bench. And I guess one day maybe I'll have to plug him in, but I'm not going to be happy about it.
Yeah. And even if you do plug him in and he gets touches, he hasn't really proven anything that he can.
He's not a goal line guy. He fumbles. There's a lot not to like about his fantasy upside. And hey, can we just shout out the fact that the Steelers did a lot of work at the running back position this offseason. 9 of their top 30 visits, that is almost a third of their top 30 visits, were held with the running backs, like
Yeah.
ranging pretty much all over the place, from Amari and Hampton, who's widely projected as like the RB2 in this class, Travion Henderson getting a lot of first round buzz, to like DJ Giddens with, in the 4th round, Dylan Sampson. There's a lot of different names that could fit the bill for the Steelers, and they did work on all of them.
Yeah, the 9 out of 30, that is crazy. So it does look like they're definitely eyeing at least one running back in this draft, and we know they are. We are going to finish up today's episode by giving you each one player that we want to hold on our roster if we were to roster them in Dynasty. We're not sure if we'd want to sell or buy them right now, but if we have them, we want to hold because we want to see it play out before trading them. We will get to that right after we hear from another one of our sponsors. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip: add the #hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are continuing to discuss players that we would like to trade away or buy or hold for fantasy and dynasty leagues before the NFL draft. We're on to the holding section. Kate, which player, if you were to roster them right now, would you want to hold before figuring out if you want to, sell them?
I'm going with Jalen Waddle, Miami wide receiver, who, I don't know, pretty wide range of outcomes in terms of like a potential trade. We've talked about Tyreek Hill and his potential to be traded on draft night, which could send shockwaves through the rest of the Miami Dolphins organization. We've already seen what Jalen Waddle can do when he's not necessarily sharing a significant target share with Tyreek Hill. And guess what? That volume was pretty darn good for fantasy. He's 26 years old. I think we've already experienced the upside. Unfortunately, the floor hasn't been as high as you might like. He's dealt with some health issues. And again, the target share hasn't always been perfectly consistent with Tyreek Hill in the offense. But I want to see what they do with Tyreek Hill. And if I'm the Jalen Waddle manager, maybe I could get a king's ransom if Tyreek Hill is out of the picture. And once he is, I think that's going to be a really good time to move on from Jalen Waddle. Or conversely, if you're looking to buy, like, now is the time. Do not wait until the draft, because again, any Tyreek Hill news is going to really shake up that market.
Yes, if you want to buy, but right now also I think he might be a little bit more expensive because the Tyreek Hill news, right?
Yeah.
So you almost just want to wait it out, and just see what happens, because it's not like I'm dying to get Waddle on my team. But if I did have him, I wouldn't want to sell him right now either, because of how much that increase will be if Tyreek Hill does get traded. But then also, this dude is only 26 years old. We've seen really good fantasy seasons from him as a rookie. He's wide receiver 13 in average points. And in 2022, he's a wide receiver 7 overall. Sorry, wide receiver 7 overall as a rookie. And then wide receiver 23 in his second year. Then the last 2 years, it has been not ideal if you rostered him, but we've seen the upside. We've seen him put up over 1,300 yards in an 8-touchdown season. So he can do it. He's still super young. And if they traded away Tyreek Hill, then all of a sudden Jalen Warren is getting 140 targets again, like he saw as a rookie.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to be, I think, a big factor here is that target share. I like Jalen Waddle. I understand there have been some like downsides, but when you're talking about any player in the NFL with the potential to get that kind of target share, maybe, you can look past some of the health issues, etc., in order to take advantage of that, especially with Tua, who we know can be an accurate quarterback in Mike McDaniel's offense, which, yeah, took a step back here in 2024, but could rebound in a big way.
Now, my guy I'm holding, it's going to be Chase Brown, running back of the Bengals. And this might be shocking because I've never been like his biggest fan. But if I were to roster him, there's no way I'm looking to trade him right now before the draft because I just don't think he's going to get you all that much in a trade because people are worried that the Bengals could replace him, right? And I get that worry. They could draft him or they could draft a running back and kind of shake it up. But I do think they just have way too many needs on defense or even on interior offensive line to go running back early, like even the first 3 rounds early. They have to dedicate all of that to fixing up their defense and interior offensive line even. Plus, they paid Joe Burrow. They paid Jamar Chase. They paid T. Higgins. They even kept Mike Gesicki and gave him some money in free agency. There's no way that the Bengals right now are worried about finding an elite running back, right? Like, I just think they're paying so many of these great offensive players to step it up that they shouldn't need the elite running backs. I really don't see them using even a top 5 round pick on a running back this year. And if he gets to keep this starting job, we saw them completely lean on him in the second half of last year, and he did perfectly fine. From weeks 9 through 18, that was after Zach Moss got injured and he was officially like done. It was just Chase Brown's show. He played on 76% of the team snaps during that span. Khalil Herbert was second among the running backs at 17%. I mean, it was all Chase Brown. The only running backs that played on a higher percent of their team snaps from weeks 9 through 18 were Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, and Kyron Williams. Chase Brown also got 24 touches per game during that span, behind only Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, and Bijan Robinson. And he was doing great for fantasy, averaging over 18 fantasy points per game during that span. It's not like he was the most efficient running back ever or scoring a ton of rushing touchdowns, but I do think he showed he was plenty good enough to lean on him for one more year at least. And if the Bengals go throughout this draft, not taking a running back in the first 5 rounds or whatever, Chase Brown's value is going to skyrocket. And then maybe I'm down to trade him before the season because I don't know how long he'll remain the starter for this team after this year, but I'm waiting for that value to go back up after the draft because right now, a lot of these trades I'm seeing go down for him just aren't enough for me. Like these are real trades again. So someone traded away Chase Brown to get Jerry Jeudy and the pick 207 in rookie drafts. That's not nearly enough for me. Someone else traded away Chase Brown to get Aldrick Estime, Keon Coleman, and the 608 in rookie drafts. That's pathetic. That's a terrible trade. Another person traded away Chase Brown and Josh Downs for Rashee Rice in the 304 in rookie drafts. And then one more Chase Brown, trade away Chase Brown for Braylon Allen and the 204 in rookie drafts. Like just none of those are clearly enough. And I think you'll get way more after the draft if they don't take someone. Obviously, if right now you can get a first round pick, like an early first round pick, anywhere like 106, 105, 104, and so on for him, then obviously you do it. But I think that's what you maybe like you're going to be able to get a lot of value for him once they don't take someone in the draft.
I'm a little bit more anxious about the Bengals drafting a running back than I think you are at this point. So I understand the hesitancy to move on at that cost. And that's kind of that's the goal of Dynasty fantasy football, right? You have your long-term team. The key is buying low, selling high. And I can't really think of a ton of players that maybe have a wider range of outcomes in terms of their post-draft value than Chase Brown, because I think his value could astronomically tank or it can astronomically skyrocket. And it's all going to come down to where the Bengals fit in a running back. I think they have to. Zach Moss had a serious neck injury. Who knows what his availability will look like in 2025. But I also don't think it can just be Chase Brown. So I understand wanting to wait and see here. But again, he's just one of those guys that it could go either way for him at this point in terms of his post-draft value. Like Jalen Waddle, yeah, his value might go up after the draft if Tyreek Hill's traded, but like I don't think he's not going to lose draft value right after the draft. Like Chase Brown is the complete opposite.
I'm going to take the gamble and I'm going to hold him because of how much I think that value will increase afterwards. So I'm going to take the gamble. And again, I just don't think you're missing out on all that much if you lose the gamble with a lot of these drafts or with a lot of these trades I'm seeing go down. yes, if you miss out, if you don't take the 104 for Chase Brown and they replace Chase Brown, it's going to suck. That's why you take the 104 right now. But if you miss out on the 212 and Braylon Allen for Chase Brown, like, I don't think it's going to hurt all that much. So I'm taking that risk. But that is it for today's episode. I want to thank Kate for joining us again today. Please go give her and Marcus Mosher a listen on the Locked On Dynasty Football podcast. They are talking all about the prospects and the draft, or in the guys that will be drafted next week. So go give them a listen. Also, go listen to Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Vinny will be back tomorrow, so we will be together discussing more fantasy goodness. We'll talk to you then. Bye, y'all.